for they held it. Fist up, it's about to go down. 846, remember the time. 46 and his face on the ground. Out the ring where she took 8 rounds. Sometimes I wish that I could press pause on life, but I'm knee deep down. Tell me time, tell me hours. Rest in power to the King T'Challa. Woke up this morning with my mind on freedom, on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind on freedom, on freedom. 2020 can't kill my vibe, but it did get my granny. Oh my God, I cried. So many people holding on to spite. I'm already alright. Sometimes I wish that I could ghost ride the whip and just dip to a place much better than this, where the sky is moonlit and the people cooling it. That sound legit. Black mama up in paradise. The indigenous is on the rise. Sell me breath, sell me life. Mask off, mask on, it's the future, right? Woke up this morning with my mind on freedom, on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind on freedom, on freedom. No longer will you categorize and demonize the way that black folks go and live their lives. They can try to bury us, but we all seize and grow in the trees and blow in the breeze. Hey, I don't have a choice but to stand my ground. You can cut us all down, but then you won't breathe. And I can hear my neighbor crying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to It's Kairos Time. My name is Reverend Dr. Theoharis. I am the director of the Kairos Center and the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign. And we are here in this Kairos moment, a time of when crisis and opportunity collide and the possibility for something new emerges. It's Kairos Time is a bi-weekly series of 30-minute talks with partners, collaborators, movement builders, where we get to discuss what's happening and what we're doing to respond to this Kairos moment. So joining us tonight for Sisters in the Wilderness, a discussion of the trailblazer Delores Williams, is first the very Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas, who is the Dean of the Episcopal Divinity School at Union Theological Seminary and the Bill and Judith Moyers Chair in Theology at Union and EDS. She's also the canon theologian at the Washington National Cathedral and the theologian in residence at Trinity Church Wall Street. I think many people know this, but Dean Douglas's academic work has focused on womanist theology, Black theology, sexuality in the Black church, and racial and social justice. She's the author of numerous articles, op-eds, books, including her most recent book that everyone has to check out. It's called Resurrection Hope, A Future Where Black Lives Matter, and it was published by Orbis Books. At the time of her 1983 ordination, Dean Douglas was one of the first 10 Black women ordained in the Episcopal Church USA. She holds her master's degree in theology and a PhD in systematic theology, both from Union Theological Seminary. I'm also honored to be joined by Reverend Dr. Gabriella Lettini, the Dean of Faculty, the Chief Academic Officer, and the Aurelia Henry Reinhardt Professor of Theological Ethics at the Starr King School for Ministry that is now located in Oakland, California. When she arrived at Starr King in August of 2005, she was charged with directing the new Masters of Arts in Social Change program there. Dr. Lettini earned her PhD from Union Theological Seminary in New York City under the supervision of Dr. Delores Williams and Dr. James Cone, two foundational scholars in womanist and Black liberation theologies. Her dissertation, The Allergy to the Other, focused on contemporary theological perspectives on otherness and hegemonic patterns of identity construction. And it is just an amazing honor to be joined with these two amazing women scholars. And it feels really appropriate to be in conversation with the two of you to to focus our conversation this evening on the trailblazer Delores Williams. So we're going to get us started.
Yeah.
We are living for sure in a wilderness moment. So many communities, especially Black communities, are struggling to survive. And this week, with all that is happening and the recently shown murder of Tyree Nichols at the hands of the police, you know, this is wilderness. This is struggle. This is violence. And we, on top of already existing suffering and death experienced, especially by Black communities and poor communities during the pandemic, and the disproportionate impact of COVID and the pandemics of racism and poverty, the environmental injustice crisis, attack on voting rights. The list really goes on. And so I want to start with you, Dean Douglas, about how the kind of groundbreaking work of Dolores Williams brings forth how it speaks to this moment, and what else you have to say into this moment, because your scholarship and ministry is so profound in this world as well.
Well, first of all, thank you, Reverend Dr. Theoharis, for not only inviting me into this conversation, and what a privilege it is to share this conversation with Dr. Lettini, but I thank you also for your work and the work that you have led us in, not only as a scholar, but as a scholar activist, and always keeping these issues before us and bringing again to the attention, because so often, right, our women scholars, Black women scholars in particular, fall easily into this category of subjugated voices and subjugated knowledge, and get lost to the history and the significance of their voices and their work. And so it is through these kind of things and the work that you're doing to keep the significance of Dolores Williams' voice and work alive, because it was very significant in terms of, and we'll talk about that later, in terms of the theological turn and the shifting paradigm that she created. But let me speak quickly to this moment. One of the reasons that a work like Sister in the Wilderness is classic work is because it's prescient, right? It continues to speak to the times. It's not time bound. It's ahead of itself in many regards, speaking to the time. Dolores seemed to have this third eye, if you will, as I always say, peering prophetically into the present and pushing us toward the future. So in this current wilderness movement, I so very quickly, one thing immediately came to mind when you asked this question about how Dolores Williams' work speaks to this. But two quick subsidiary things was, one, you just said it. You know, we're in this wilderness. This is where, you know, Black faith lives, and so, you know, I said immediately, how long, oh Lord, you know, and like, where are you? You know, that's the question. And Dolores poses in this in the wilderness, you know, Sisters in the Wilderness, like, how does God show up? So that came alive. And then I thought, you know, of, oh my gosh, our sons are Ishmael. We're the sons of Ishmael, right? Hagar's children. Which leads me to the thing that first came to mind, and because it's what I sort of tweeted out immediately in response to yet another Black young man being lynched, 21st century lynching, and all the complications of what that signifies in terms of the particularities of it. And I tweeted out, when are we going to stop when are they going to stop killing our sons? And what Dolores Williams reminds us of, and it's the thematic in her work, is that we are called not into death, but into life. That we are called to live. We are called into life-giving ministry. We are not called into death. And so I'll stop there. And that's what, you know, to me, how she continues to reverberate and speak to this moment, that we are called into life, not death. So stop killing our sons.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Lettini, what from what Dr. Delores was just saying, like in this moment, like what is speaking to you, or and how is Dolores Williams speaking?
Yes, and let me also express thankfulness for being invited here and having this amazing opportunity of being in dialogue with Dean Douglas. Well, one of the first things as a wise scholar, the importance of Dr. Williams' really clear condemnation of white supremacy as demonic, as evil, and that idea about the monarchy and the many ways that white privilege through many institutions and paradigms as and continue to exercise violence and oppress Black people. Her focus of her work was specifically, Black women, but and the condemnation of the ways that white women have contributed to this as well. And so the importance of not just focusing on gender issues or, like the importance of intersectional analysis, but also the importance of condemnation, of naming things as they are. When you see evil in that can be complex and has long histories, and then you need to understand the history and the complexity, but you still have to aim it. You have to fight it. And at the same time, it wasn't something, that I think what Dean Douglas was also stressing about, the importance of looking at the witnesses throughout history in the Bible, but throughout histories of, how people have fought back this kind of oppression, the racism, anti-Blackness. And so to look and learn and be nurtured by the witnesses and to relearn to look at what the history, the news they have given us from the perspective of the others, being Hagar or being Ishmael or being contemporary Black women. And
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, and it makes me think of one of a favorite quote of mine, and really a concept of Dr. Delores Williams, where she talks about how liberation in the Hagar story is not, given by God, but it finds its source in human initiative. And so Dean Douglas, I don't know if you have things to say about that, and just this whole idea of the role that we play in that resisting, and in that crying out of how long. I mean, and just all, like, both parts of it, crying out for justice and crying out, why is this happening again?
Yes, no, that's right. What I like about what Dolores really calls us into in Sisters in the Wilderness, we've got to be reminded that, the Sisters in the Wilderness, this book shifted our paradigm of thinking on at least a couple of levels, right? One, it really shifted our sort of the narrative in terms of the cross and salvation and redemption, right? And it's like, Dolores became infamous for saying, we don't need all the blood, right? Right. And so we don't know, say something about that in a minute. So that shift in our sort of soteriology, we want to get theological, but in the way we think about salvation, in the way in which she took on any even accidental models of redemptive suffering, right? And took on my mentor, brother, friend, and gave us room to do it, gave me room to do it, to take on Jim Cone and Black theology and all this salvation happening at the moment of the crucifixion. Dolores said, no, it happens in the resurrection. So that was one shift, but the other is this thing you're talking about, Dr. Theoharis, and that is this emphasis, this focus on Hagar, right? And, oh no, we that are blessed with ebony grace, we women that are blessed with ebony grace, Sarah's not our friend. right? Not our friend. That's the slave master and his wife. And they said, Sarah's gonna have our child. I mean, isn't that the story of what happened to Black women in slavery? That you are the essential laborers in more ways than one. And so what Dolores did was she opened a new door into that story that had been known as the Abraham Sarah story, and said, oh, no. If you really want to learn about God and the complicated realities of God, you got to go in through the door of the least of the ones in these stories, and that's Hagar. And when you do that, not only are you sort of affirming the struggle that has been the struggle of Black women and other women of color, but Black women in this country, but we are also finding out that God isn't that so easy to understand. And sometimes we have to say, really, God? Because you're right, Liz, that Hagar initiated, right, the cry out, which is interesting because it says something about human initiative. God just, you just can't sit around and wait, right? So that even with the Israelites, God responded to their cries, right? And so God responds to a cry in the wilderness, but guess whose cry it's not? Dolores makes it clear. It's not Hagar. God responds to Ishmael. Right. And so I like the way she complicates it and also helps us understand that, this God that we have said is so clearly a liberator. Well, let's complicate this, because if we go in through the door of the least of these in these stories, God's not always liberating, which also opened up the Exodus story, that it becomes more complicated. It's not. She called me away from it's not. Let's not focus on the event. Let's focus on the story. And the Exodus story gets really problematic. And so because they're landing upon people. And so this is the wilderness.
Yeah.
What it means to encounter God in your wilderness. It's not always so clear. Like today, the mothers are crying out and they're still killing our sons and our daughters. When is God going to hear our cries? How many sons and daughters need to be sacrificed because Dolores reminds us that sacrifice is not necessary. So how many are going to have to die on the crosses of today for someone, even God, to listen? So anyway, I'll stop there, but that's what Dolores brings alive and shifts our whole way of thinking about God, the cross, and obviously engaging in how we enter into God's movement in history.
No, it's amazing. And I just want us to spend a little time, Dr. Lettini, maybe you can comment on this, where we do just, take note of how amazing it is to have a statement like that there's nothing redemptive in suffering, that there's nothing we can't get any good to come out of suffering, and that crucifixion might happen, execution might happen, but it's not where there's an ounce of salvation. Or something that makes things better. And so I mean, it's such a contribution. It's such a challenge. Can you kind of comment on that more, expound on that more, how that plays out, like in a world of wilderness?
Well, I mean, in so many ways. One of the things that Dr. Williams' work did is always pointing out what also the insidious nature of creating cover-up stories for the violence, so they become somehow redemptive, they become somewhat salvific. Somehow the person really wanted in some ways or was cooperating in the evils that inflicted to them. And she's really like in her work denouncing that. And as a scholar, as an educator, she really engages and challenges in uncovering these stories. And also and an easy way to uncover the story is to listen to the perspective of the others in the situations, because they will see the story different. They'll know the story different in their bones, in their lives, and they will read a text differently because of their life experiences. The other is also to interrogate oneself more, because she speaks so much about the colonization of one's mind, and so white supremacy and the monarchy and patriarchy has so much colonize our imaginary and our souls that we are tempted to just buy in these stories in very subtle ways. And so that's why one of the interesting things that she would do, she was really giving us as a professor the liberty to and the challenge to not just in our theological work to challenge this, but also bring it into the liturgy, because that means that rituals will keep changing the nature of the life we lived in. And so that it was a whole constant movement of thinking and action in relation to this denouncing of violence. So that, because otherwise sometimes you denounce it verbally and then you go into a liturgical space and you replicate it, or in another context to maybe other forms, like of discourse, of arts. So the varying skill in seeing it and denouncing it and recreating another story, the focus on life, on abundance of life, and
No, thank you. So that makes me want to kind of take a little bit of a step back and just think a little bit about this amazing leader, Dr. Delores Williams, and how, how did you work with her? How was she impactful in your life? What's something that you feel like you need the world to know about, that kind of is here because of her, and then the contributions, and Dean Douglas, maybe we can start with you there if you're willing.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you so much for that question, because we think of Delores Williams as this figure out there and the great work that she did. And she could only do that work because she was as good of a person as she was, as it was reflected in that work. I knew Delores when I came to Union now over 40 years ago. I came initially as an MDiv student, as you said, and Bion State as a PhD student, and Delores was here. And here's what I'll say, and we remained friends throughout, that Delores was, yes, a good friend, but took seriously what it meant to be like this mentor, right? That she lived out the sort of womanist relationality and relationship. And I just remember, that Delores was always on the ready. And no one called my name like Delores. It was Kelly. It was Kelly, and she would tease me because I was Jack and Jill and I was Episcopalian, and she was always on the ready. Oh no, Kelly, what that meant. But no matter what, she was supportive and shared her wisdom. And to me, she helped me to understand. She was an exemplar of what it meant to always, our responsibility to help the next one down, the next generation. And she did that. And I will end by saying this. I remember when I was teaching at Goucher, first, and I did a conference with a colleague of mine celebrating the 50th anniversary of James Baldwin's Go Tell It, and invited Delores to come. And Delores wasn't in the best of health then, but she came because I asked. And if I knew how sort of her health was fragile with her back issues and stuff, then I would have never asked. And when she came, I said, "Oh, Delores, you should have." But that's who she was. Wow. Just a fine person and a womanist par excellence.
Amazing. Amazing. Dr. Lettini.
Yes, I met Dr. Williams first in 1991 when I was at Union for a 1-year program that was part of my theological studies in Italy at the Waldensian Seminary. And then she was my advisor then. And then 2 or 3 years later, I came back and she became my advisor in the doctoral program. And for me, I mean, I never had a woman teaching theology in my previous 4 years of theological studies. So it was, really such an important experience for me under all levels. And she really reshaped my thinking in terms of, I consider myself a feminist without having had any real examples of feminism in my lives. And it was such a blessed encounter for me, because then I could work with her and have a completely different understanding of what my task as a feminist working class scholar, would be, what I had to do in the world and what I should consider. And yeah, I was also her TA, so we had many conversations about teaching and what we are doing in the classroom, and writing my dissertation, where she was really important in also getting my first full-time job at Union. So she was such an important mentor, and a mentor that was just a mentor with really good boundaries and no personal agenda, but just, the good balance of, challenge and affirmation. But I had the sense that the fact that she took time to work with me was such a gift, and I had to, really be committed to the work that she asked me to do in terms of working around, white supremacy and the many ways that it affects our world. So as a European, I had a good understanding of some aspects of the evil of Western colonialism, but the formation I received, they were much deeper, and wasn't just about the past, the present, but also about, how we imagine the future.
Indeed. Well, I really wish we could just keep on going. There is so much to the life and the work. But alas, we're at the end of our time, and I'm wanting to close, I think, with a quote from Dr. Delores Williams. We at the Kairos Center, have a mission to raise up generations of religious community leaders, to build a broad-based movement led by those that are most impacted by racism and poverty and injustice. And she, in so many ways, talked about this kind of leadership and agency of the people, the homeless, the poor, the women, the disenfranchised, the impact in Black communities, and then these kind of survival and resistance strategies. And so I just want to kind of close with her words, that faith has taught me to see the miraculous in everyday life, the miracle of ordinary Black women resisting and rising above evil forces in society, where forces work to destroy and subvert the creative power and energy my mother and grandmother taught me God gave Black women. And so I think about her and lift her up and honor her, and really want to thank the two of you for joining us. Kelly, maybe you want the last word, and then we'll.
I said, no, I think Dolores should have the last word, and that was the last word.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. For everyone that's tuning in, want to remind people that our next It's Kairos Time is on Valentine's Day, when we're going to get together and challenge stereotypes of love and discuss revolutionary love. Please join us then. RSVP. Join our list at the Kairos Center by texting Kairos, Kairos, to 833-577-1315. Please keep on living out this kind of resistance and struggle and survival. And thanks so much for being here. And thanks to the two of you for both joining us this evening, but more for the work you're doing in the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You block your blessing, I'ma run down the town just to drop a message from the top of the Western Tower so the world can read it as the midnight gospel. They sell me love, sell me peace. I ain't never been a killer, but I slay the beat. Sell me hope, sell me dreams. You can't sell me back my freedom, it belongs to me. Woke up